Now, in a republic, a representative votes according to his conscience, not according to what the people want. Okay? So, in a democracy, our founders were afraid of democracy. They call it a mobocracy. Because in a mobocracy, there is no primary moral code. Everybody does what they want to do. So tomorrow, we could all vote to kill Jason. And in a democracy, it would be legal. And this is exactly what happened in Germany. Right? They all voted to kill the Jews. I mean, not in so many words. They just voted that the Jews were not human anymore. They had no primary moral law. In fact, Germany was a republic, but they changed the primary moral code.
That's right. They were a republic.
Rome was a republic.
Rome was a republic.
So it's not sufficient to be just a republic. There's two parts of it. One, you're a republic, but two, what is your primary moral code, and can it change?
Rule of law. And if I remember in the Declaration of Independence, one of the faults that was targeted to the King of England was the assent of law.
Yes.
To not assent to law and to uphold law was disdainful, was destructive to a society. And so I recall that in our conversation, the assent to law is an important combination with the republic, that there is right and wrong.
Yes.
And that there is, when we assent to laws, we preserve our culture and our government.
Well, and also the fact that the king could not subvert the law. The law was king, the king was not law.
Right.
So in the same place, the law is king, the legislature is not the law.
Right.
It's not king, right? So in our case, we have a law, and here's what law is our law? Well, it's clearly said that it was the laws of nature and nature's God. Okay, so we all believe America is based on a foundation of law, the laws of nature and nature's God. So now we have to ask ourselves, which God were they talking about in the Constitution and the Declaration? Well, obviously, they were talking about the Judeo-Christian God. And obviously the law that they thought was the laws of nature and nature's God was the law that was revealed in the Old and New Testaments.
Because the laws of biblical God, laws came before kings.
Yes.
David came, Saul came,
but they were all subject
Solomon
to the law.
came, and they were all subject first to the law.
Yes.
The law preceded, the laws of God preceded the kings, the ruling class.
Yes.
Interesting.
Now here's the other thing. You don't need to go to the Bible to find these laws. You can get them out of nature, which is why they call it the natural law. You can derive these laws out of nature. So there are actually two sources for the law. One is the law of God, revealed supernaturally in the Bible, the Old and New Testaments. And the other one is the laws of nature, which is revealed, or natural law, which is revealed by the school of hard knocks.
Reason,
logic. You try something, it doesn't work, and you go, that's a stupid thing to do. Right? So we believe that the law, the real law, is greater and far superior and clearer than the derived law, if you will.
So there's revelation, and then there's reason.
Reason.
And then there's two schools of thought.
Well, now don't make them too different, because reason, you can apply reason to revelation too.
Okay.
Because here's the second part of that I talk about briefly in the book. I say, well, the question is, well, which God are you going to go to? Are you going to go to Allah? Are you going to go to Buddha? Are you going, but not that Buddha was a god, or are you going to Krishna or any of the other gods? Well, it was quite clear that our founding fathers were talking about the God of the Old and New Testaments. That was very clear. And secondly, and this is where I love it, is if you use apologetics, only one of the gods turn out to be the real God. All the other gods turn out to be false gods. Now, people can argue with me, and I'm quite happy to defend why I believe that God is true. Right? But that's a different argument altogether.
Fair enough.
So what's the difference between a theocracy and a republic? A republic is based on a rule of law, but we don't practice. You see, if you go through the Old Testament and you go through it, there are 4 kinds of laws in the Old Testament. Because people say, well, do I have to stone my neighbor because he's gay? What do I do? You know, the Old Testament is very clear about what I do here. So
the straw men start popping up left and right.
What about, you know, there's this thing they did on TV with the West Wing where you know, where President Bartlett or whatever his name is, you know, does this whole thing and goes, do I need to kill my neighbor because he plays football and touches a pigskin? Well, for one, footballs are not made of pigskin. They're called pigskins, but they aren't made of pigskin. Usually they're made of leather. Okay, but besides that, here's the point. There are 4 different kinds of laws in the Old Testament. Ceremonial laws, civil laws, judicial laws, and moral laws.
Ceremonial,
Laws,
judicial,
civil, and moral. And it's very clear, if you just read it, you will clearly see which is which. Now let me explain what. The ceremonial laws is what most people think, the ceremonial and judicial laws are what most people think of when you think of a theocracy. Right? They say in a theocracy, you have to go to church on this day, you have to do this, on the Sabbath you have to do this. That's the ceremonial laws. You have to ring the bell in this way. Right. Well, the ceremonial laws only apply to the Jewish people. It's very clear.
Yes,
right?
I see that.
They wear the ephod, they wear this, they wear the phylacteries, all that stuff.
And that makes sense. That's logical, yeah, that would.
We don't need to do that. So a theocracy that applies the ceremonial law will be, a theocracy would apply the ceremonial law, we don't want that. The second one is the judicial laws. Well, the judicial laws are the punishments. And what it really means is this is the, so you take all the other laws and say this is the punishment for doing this. So in the Old Testament, if you broke a ceremonial law on the Sabbath, you could get stoned. If you were an adulterer, which is a moral law, you could also get stoned, right? So all these things were there. If you were a bad kid, you could get stoned too, right? So all these were the punishment, but these were judicial laws. Today, we have our own judges and our own legislatures, so we decide our own punishments. And today, we don't want to punish people for any of the ceremonial laws, right? We don't want to stone people for adultery. We want to have a different kind of punishment. I still think adultery should be illegal because it does destroy the family, and
sure does.
I go into great detail in my book. But it doesn't mean we should be stoning them. So you can take out all those punishments because those punishments are judicial laws and not applicable to us because we're not a theocracy. Third one was civil laws. Well, civil laws are like the road should be this wide. The houses should be this big. In the Bible you have this, when you build a house, it should have a little balcony kind of thing. It talks about balconies and the height of the balcony and all that. Why? So people don't roll over. But these again are civil laws, and they change with the times and they change with the technology, right? Right now we have all these civil laws on what to do with intellectual property infractions, right? Which is you're stealing something, but there's a civil law on what it looks like and things like that.
Patent law,
things like that. These are all really, in a sense, civil law. They're based on a moral code, sure, which is don't steal, but there are other laws beyond it. So these again would not be applicable from the Old Testament now, because you know what? It's a completely different. It depends on the technology and what you're using and the system. If you're living in one area, you have a different kind of civil law. If you're living in a different area, you have a different kind of civil law. Okay, so what's left is the moral law. Well, guess what the moral law is? 10 Commandments. And the only one that people would object on the 10 Commandments is to keep the Sabbath holy. Yeah, we think you should keep the Sabbath holy, but we're not going to tell you what the punishment is going to be for it. Each community can decide if the Sabbath should be punished by just a stern warning, or you should be said, you can decide that. But the other laws are all right down the line. Do not steal, do not commit adultery, do not covet your neighbor's wife, and all that stuff. Yeah. All these laws are moral laws. And you notice that they all fall into the 2 greatest commandments. What are they? Love the Lord your God.
With all your heart, your soul, and your mind.
And love your neighbor.